Oh, do you have a Band-Aid? Because I scraped my knee when I fell for you. Get it? Because pickup lines. They're pretty annoying. Hiya folks, Fruit and Doggy here. Talking about things that aggravate and annoy me. And the thing that's on my mind right now is poor carpentry. And really what I'm looking at is household issues. Poor designs, poor arrangements, but really poor work. Lack of quality control. That really just kind of irks me. And I can't really say this from an expert point of view because I'm not really handy. I am not talented at artsy things, crafts. Pardon. I'm not exactly clumsy. I just don't have a knack for woodworking or anything of that nature. However, I do have family. I've known quite a few people who are very talented at that. And you can see a real contrast between somebody who's not only good at it, but has a passion for it and has pride in their work, who takes that time to make sure what they're building is quality. By contrast, those who are slipshod, use poor quality materials, who take the kind of cheap route, it's so disappointing, but it can also be quite concerning. And they've even have shows on TV, one I can think of off the top of my head, where it's kind of a reality show, not quite a contest, but they go into, it's sort of, yeah, it is a reality show, where they speak with people who hired a contractor, show the people the low quality work, and list all the different issues and complaints that arose trying to get this person to finish the job. And I don't remember the celebrity's name. I'll do a search, and if I can figure out who it is, I'll link in a couple of videos in the description, maybe pop it in the video. But it is pretty entertaining. But what he does is that he'll confront the contractor that was hired, and if I remember right, gives them basically two choices. Either, hey, you go in there, you finish the job, you do what you're supposed to do, or it's like, okay, we're just going to leave it be, and we're going to do it. We're going to do a job you refuse to complete. And again, I can't speak from an expert point of view, but you don't really have to be an expert to notice obvious failures. And again, in these shows, they're so bad that it really is an extraordinary level of either laziness, incompetence, or something. But I've, in the few rental houses I've lived in, and a couple of apartments, I sure have noticed some simple mistakes and simple errors and issues. And the ones that really annoy me are the ones that I would think would be fundamental. That would be, if you can't do this right, you really shouldn't be trusted to do anything else. For instance, floors that are perfectly level. And I am being a little bit of a stickler on that one, but the rental house I was living at before, it was a discernible difference. As you were walking, you felt the shift in the floor when it decreased. And that, I don't really have a lot of faith in that in the long term. In the short term, I'm not seeing anything that's, suggesting the floor is going to buckle and cave in, that the whole house is about to split apart, but it makes me wonder about the long-term integrity of the house, of the foundation. And again, I understand that certain things can warp and become distorted over time, but houses are built to be rock solid. A floor doesn't go off level just because it's a couple decades old. That doesn't happen. Not unless you're either using some real poor quality materials and your core foundation, your base, your walls. You do not want to be taking the cheap route on those areas. But really, it's a matter of work. It's a person who didn't put in the time to do it properly. And I will admit that at times there are design choices made in a house that annoy me because it's not a feng shui thing. I haven't studied feng shui. I don't know anything about feng shui except for very surface level. But it's just the way the house is set up, the way the rooms flow into each other, the way the windows are placed, especially outlets. That can be a really important one. It can either enhance the way you would set up your rooms and your house and your living spaces, or it can actually box you in and greatly limit your options. Well, the only outlet in this room is right here, so I can't put any furniture that would obstruct it, so I gotta put the furniture in this way. Or, well, the windows are right there, so if I want to ever enjoy the sunshine, then I can't put furniture right in front of there. Now, I will give more leeway on that issue, because if you are looking at a house that was built 30, 40, 50 years ago, they weren't designing and building houses to deal with, obviously, modern issues. They couldn't. And so, what things I might be looking for in the way a house is designed, that is probably very different than the people who are originally constructing it. Though I do have to wonder how far just a little bit of common sense would have been useful and helpful. Again, say outlets, for instance. They should be placed in such a way that they're maybe not necessarily central to a room. In fact, they usually should be more off in the corner. But that's kind of the point. Are they placing outlets in a sensible place? How wide are the doorways? Which ways... This is a really important one and a really simple one. Which ways do the doors open and close into? Because that can be completely backwards, and this is something that actually drives me crazy. And it's not... I will say this is a bit of a pet peeve. When you have a screen door and then a front door, and the door handles are on opposite sides. I hate that. And it's not that big a deal, but it just annoys me. Because why in the world would you want to have the door handle on this side that you would open, and then instead of going here to open the door, the same location, you have to go to the other side? I don't know. It's just simple things like that where it shows people weren't paying attention. They weren't thinking about things. And I suppose that seems really nitpicky. It may not make a whole lot of sense, but if you've ever tried handling those sorts of doors where they're on the opposite side and you've got, an armful of groceries, your hands are kind of busy, and you're trying to unlock the door, you'd sort of understand what I mean, I think. But I know this really isn't that big of a deal. Or I should say, the door one isn't that big of a deal, but I think we can all agree that people who skip corners when it comes to building houses, that's just the one profession out of, I guess, many, that you should not go into if you're not going to give half a dang. Because that's people's house. Those are people's homes. That's their homestead. That's where all of their belongings are. That's where they go to sleep every night. This isn't a small, insignificant matter. Now, the individual things that you might be working on, they may not seem that big a deal, but when it's your house, you don't feel so happy. Then you start objecting to somebody cutting corners, like, hey, wait a second, that's not how it's supposed to be done. Well, that's how you did it at your project. Well, that was different. I mean, that house wasn't mine. And I think this joke... Yeah, it's a joke. This joke sums it up pretty well. A carpenter was getting married to a rich woman. They were truly in love. It was not a gold digger in reverse situation. Actually, I don't know what that's called when the man marries for money. Is it still just a gold digger? Sorry, a little off topic there, but... they were getting married, and so the father, it's like, hey, you know what? The father-in-law, it's like, hey, I got a project for you. So he gave him $1 million budget, and he told him to build the house. It's like, hey, here's kind of the plan, here's the design I have in mind. You just do your thing. So it's like, okay, here we go. This is a project to sink my teeth into. But instead of going into it, it's like, hey, you know what? I'm really going to show off for my father-in-law. The way he saw it, it's like, you know what? I've never really gotten along with this guy. He's a jerk. He's a know-it-all. And so what I'm going to do is cut every corner I legally can. And I'm going to pocket all the side cash that I can possibly get away with. So he bought the cheapest materials. He put in the slightest work he possibly could. So it was standing. It met all legal codes, but when he was finished, he knew that it might stand for a while. Again, it'd meet the bare minimum, but not the kind of place you'd really want to live in if you knew anything about carpentry. You would not want to rest your head under that roof. But he pocketed a couple $100,000 out of it, so he was happy. And then the father-in-law, after he saw that it was complete, it's like, all right, good job, because he didn't know any better. And it's like, here is your wedding gift. You just built your own house. This is my gift to you. Wah wah. And I really appreciate that joke. Maybe that didn't come off incredibly well. I didn't do the setup and I will put in a rim shot, note to self, but I don't know. It always seems different when you're the one who has to bear the consequences. So, I guess that's just something to bear in mind. I think that is a good rule of thumb for all of us. It's like, hey, if this was happening to my family, my friends, me, myself, would I be okay with how I'm doing things? Would I be okay if I had to put up with these conditions? Maybe not. And you know what? I need to put in a little bit more work. But yeah, I think that could tie into a whole nother video about work ethic. But anyways, that's really all for this video. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a good one. Fruitin' doggy.